Well, good evening. I am Anuj Mehrotra. I am the Dean for the Scheller College of Business, and I am delighted to welcome you to this opening session for this spring semester in Tech Talks Business. And it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you, our guest today, Eric Gray, who is the CEO of GE Vernova Power Company. So welcome. So let me start by, first of all, congratulating you, Eric, from your recent promotion. And I know that this happened soon after you accepted our, this invitation to come on Tech Talks Business. So I'm not claiming causality, but it is kind of difficult to ignore.
Great things
coincidence here.
Georgia Tech. That's all I've been told.
All right, great. So, we'll get to your expanded role later on, but I wanted to ask you about how you started. You have been a lifetimer at GE, and you have now the CEO. So walk us through that journey of yours to get to know a little bit more about you.
Sure. So I would say I may have had a unique journey in the company. So maybe just a little bit about me. My undergraduate is in chemistry. I actually went to the school down the street for my MBA and concentrated in finance and risk management. But I was pre-med in undergrad. So when I had decided that I no longer had the desire to go to med school, I found myself with a chemistry degree, and I really didn't want to be a chemist either. So the General Electric company happened to be hiring for operators at a power plant in Minooka, Illinois. I grew up just south of Chicago. And I thought to myself, well, I've learned all these great case studies about GE throughout my undergrad. Always heard what a great organization it was, the ability to come into GE and really go through their management training programs, etc. So I interviewed for an operator position at a power plant. Come to find out that the customer who owned the facility was mandating that we had a degreed chemist run the water treatment facility. Now, the facility wasn't even built yet. It was just a field in the middle of nowhere, Illinois. A farmer sold off part of his land to build this power plant, and they basically hired me on the spot as a plant chemist. And I would say from there, my career kind of took off. I was fortunate enough to have very good sponsors, very good mentors. People saw more in me than maybe what I saw in myself, and gave me unbelievable opportunities, largely in operations to start. I actually was nominated to become one of the inaugural members of our project management leadership program. So 2.5 years into the company, I found myself in one of those leadership programs that I had read so much about. And it just gave me an opportunity to learn our commercial organization, our supply chain organization, engineering. I did do a rotation in project management for somebody who never left the country. Being 24, 25 years old, I found myself in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America. So it really just gave me a good global view of the world. And from there, I did a few more operational roles, went back and forth between our headquarters and our pole roles, being closest to the customer, and then found myself in a commercial role. And I would say it was probably one of the defining moments in my career. I was actually working out of our Philadelphia office. Probably had a team of about 1,400 people that were doing maintenance across the United States, or the northern United States, I should say. And our CEO here in Atlanta asked if I would move to Atlanta and take on our commercial organization of about 14 people who were renegotiating contracts across the globe. And for me, I couldn't understand, at first, well, why would I want to do this? I had a good-sized organization. I felt like I was on the right trajectory. And for a lot of people, they said, wow, it felt like you're taking a step back. But it gave me commercial experience that I really didn't have up until that point. It gave me a lot more global experience working directly with customers and contracts. And I really learned a ton in terms of the different markets. I had been very experienced, I would say, in the markets here in the United States, but just hadn't learned a lot domestically or internationally yet. And from there, had a number of different leadership roles here in Atlanta. When we formed Gas Power in 2019, I also took on responsibility for our new unit sales because up until this point, I'd really done just services. And then in 2022, I took on the Gas Power CEO role, and then last week took on the Power role.
So, well, wonderful. So this is a great story here for your career. You were, of course, there when GE split into three companies.
Yes,
and that was perhaps one of the most consequential decisions for GE. So walk us through that transition, and what was your role in leading through that transition at that time?
So I think I still, it's kind of like remember where you were when the announcement came. I was actually back in Chicago when Larry made the announcement that he was going to split the remainder of the General Electric company into three companies. A healthcare company, a purpose-built energy company now called GE Vernova, and the traditional GE Aerospace company that kind of took on all the legacy responsibilities of GE. At first, it was really emotional for me. Again, this is coming up now on my 25th year. That was about 4 years ago, so 21 years in the company. And to think about a GE that was going to be in multiple pieces, I think a lot of our employees struggled with that. Now, I think through time, we've proven that the value of the company was definitely worth more in pieces than it was in total. But I think what it's allowed us to do is be a lot more nimble company. GE was rooted in deep culture. We want to keep the good things that we had in GE, but leave behind what really grew to be a lot of bureaucracy. In terms of what my role was, I would say one of the best things that Larry and Scott and the rest of the leaders of these separate companies did was we formed a separation office. And we really allowed the operating leaders in the businesses to continue the operations. And we used that separation office to really focus on splitting those companies apart, doing the spins, et cetera. So outside of maybe getting pulled into a few meetings here or there, I think one of the best things we could have done is allow the operating leaders to keep operating and then use a separate team to actually do the spin.
This seems quite complex. So was there any moment there that maybe it's easier not to do this at all? And
no, I think once we made the announcement, it was full steam ahead. We spun healthcare a year before Vernova. So I think that was a great proof point in terms of when they saw the success of the healthcare organization now standing on its 2 feet. I think it just built the momentum of allowing then GE Vernova to spin a year later.
Yeah. So for those of us who don't wake up every morning thinking about gas turbines, tell us a little bit about your power business overall and Vernova's overall business model.
Sure. So Vernova's actually split into three different segments. I'll start first with our electrification segment. That's all the grid equipment, transformers, breakers, power conversion, batteries. So really anything from HVDC to small breakers that would go into power plants. So pretty a wide spread of products in that segment. The next segment is our wind turbine business, both the onshore wind and offshore wind. Although we had our earnings call this morning and you would have heard our CEO talk about the fact that we'll finish the last two offshore wind projects that we have when we can. They've been halted for right now. But offshore wind is a really tough business to be in, and it's one that the acceptance of the cost of what it takes to really install a wind turbine in the middle of the ocean. And when you think about it, you're putting a massive blade on a tower that at any given moment could be shifting 12 feet one way or the other. Really hard to get those blades installed. So it's just a difficult business model to be in. So that business will largely be onshore wind going forward. And then the power segment is our gas turbine business, our nuclear business, and our hydro business. So I'll start with gas because that is the one that I've spent the last 25 years in. We service anything from 35 megawatt gas turbines up to power blocks of, let's call it 600 megawatts. So a pretty large array of different products that can be used for fast power applications. We have units that are 35 megawatts that can show up on 2 tractor trailers, and we can almost effectively deploy that power immediately. We've got 45-day installations, and then we've got 24-month installations. So really a large range of products that we have. But then really what the biggest part of I spent my career on is then servicing those assets. So once those assets get installed, they need maintenance every 3 to 4 years. Doing that maintenance is actually quite complex. When you think about a 35 megawatt engine, it's really the same engine that's on the wing of an airplane. So you can take that engine off, you can bring it into a depot, you maintain those in a fixed facility. When you're talking about a 600 megawatt gas turbine, we come to you. So we've got to bring all the hot section parts and effectively disassemble a gas turbine in a field wherever the customer is. Some of these are indoor units, but in the South, it's very prevalent that these will be outdoor units. So we work in all kinds of weather conditions. We take gas turbines apart, we put the new parts in, we put them back together with clearances that are smaller than the size of a human hair. So it's pretty impressive in terms of what our field teams are capable of out in the field. We also still in the gas power business maintain all of the steam turbine facilities that are still running either natural gas or coal. So especially in the last 2 years, we thought that was going to be a business that was going to taper off. We don't build any new steam turbines for coal anymore. As part of our sustainability goals, we did announce that we wouldn't support any more of those projects, but we still support our customers who still have a large install base of steam turbines. And then we have a controls business. So we bought back the controls business that spun with Baker Hughes, which was our oil and gas company 2 years ago. And they do all the control work, not only for gas, but also for our nuclear business, our wind turbine business. So that business kind of spans across the multiple segments of Vernova already. And then what I'm learning, and I just spent the last 2 days in Wilmington, North Carolina with our nuclear team, is really the opportunity that we have in front of us with small modular reactors, 300 megawatt nuclear power plants, which we will have the first in the world go COD with Ontario Power Generation in Canada here by the end of this decade.
Wow. So I think I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning thinking only about gas turbines myself. But let me ask you, so you've just stepped into this role and there is so much to learn and do here. What decisions do you think will be the most consequential in the next year for you?
I think just ensuring that on the gas turbine side, I would say that's a strategy that I'm very comfortable with. The biggest challenge that we have there isn't wondering where our next order is coming from, because we are in a market today where we are now taking orders out until 2029, 2030 for gas turbines. The biggest challenge we have there is really execution. It's deploying all the new equipment that we're buying, the new lean lines that we're installing in our factories in Greenville, South Carolina, Schenectady, New York, Belfort, France, Hungary, to really produce and try to meet the demand that we have from our customers today for more gas turbines. On the nuclear side, it's absolutely the standardization of our design for the SMR. So Darlington up in Canada, Unit 1, is first of its kind. So we're learning a lot as we're constructing that facility, and it's really now going to what we're going to call the next evolution, our EVO design, which will become the standard for the SMR. That is so critical for that industry, because if you think about the challenges of building large-scale nuclear over the last 2-3 decades, it's been the fact that every plant was different. And every plant had different engineering features. It was very hard to get scale. What we want to do with SMRs is standardize, modularize 300 megawatt packages where we can easily construct those with our EPC partners, our engineering, procurement, and construction partners, in order to be able to deploy these much faster than you ever would traditional nuclear.
I'm getting a feeling that there are lot more abbreviations at GE than even Georgia Tech, and I'm still trying to understand the Georgia Tech abbreviations. But there's been a lot of conversation about the surge in energy demand because of AI, data centers, EVs, electrification of homes. Some, in fact, believe that in the next 8 to 10 years that the demand will double for that. So tell us a little bit about the current state of energy industry and what trends are you seeing?
So I completely agree. But if you think about it, the last 2 decades, in almost every corner of the globe, there has been very little baseload power that's actually been being installed. The world's focused on a lot of renewable power, so a lot of solar, a lot of wind. And we wrote a white paper about 5 years ago that said you should absolutely deploy as much renewable power as you can, as quickly as you can. But in order to facilitate the utilization of the renewable power, you have to install baseload power. And the cleanest option for baseload power was large-scale combined cycle power plants with natural gas-fired generation. Unfortunately, we didn't see a lot of that over the last decade for sure, if not 2 decades. So a lot of the growth that you're seeing today, while data centers get the majority of the airtime, it truly is the need for additional power generation for manufacturing, for the electrification of things. That really kind of got the ball rolling. What I would say is it didn't even happen in the U.S. It happened in places like Taiwan first, in Saudi Arabia. We still do a significant amount of business in those countries today. Mexico, we just signed some new orders in. So it's really a global phenomenon. And now, yes, AI is kind of just the snowball effect of the data centers that are being installed, the massive amounts of power that they require. But I think our view is we're going to continue to see this trend happen for a much longer period of time than maybe anybody thought, just to catch up, but then to fuel all the new demand that's coming in as well.
Yeah. So our president, Cabrera, he just returned from the World Economic Forum in Davos. And one of the things that seemed to be the common discussion there was that AI, the future of AI depends on power. Now, our Georgia Tech students already knew about that, so that part was clear. But with all of that, how is this going to how are you thinking about reshaping the grids and making them more operational and planned? How are you planning the grid itself to be upgraded to be able to have that power?
So I would say that isn't my strongest area of expertise, but our electrification team absolutely has what we call electrification software. And a lot of the software that we have developed allows you to more efficiently use the grids that you have today. But there's a level of infrastructure that has to be built first that allows that power to get to where it needs to be. So unfortunately, the wind doesn't necessarily blow in the places where you need the power the most. Unfortunately, the solar farms aren't in the places that you need the power. So first, you have to get all that power to the locations where you actually can deploy it. But then the software that we've developed is the way that we most efficiently can move that power around the grid. And we can also protect ourselves from things like natural disasters. So our software team, I think every time there's hurricane potentials around the country, they're on high alert to make sure that all of the software that we've designed that will be able to shut off parts of the grid before you go to a complete blackout are all working exactly the way that we've designed them to be, such that we can protect areas from a potential blackout or larger outages than what you would naturally experience. There's also a lot of AI, and for all of us here in Georgia, I think you saw Southern Company, and not that it's necessarily our software, but the software does exist, where they use AI models to look at tree coverage. So tree coverage over, highly valuable transmission lines, getting crews deployed earlier. I know Southern Company had crews come in from Indiana. They had people on high alert, and they were looking for places where they should proactively go remove limbs and things like that, just knowing that there was a lot of ice coming. So I think there's a tremendous use for AI across the industry in terms of being able to protect the infrastructure and the grid.
So based on what you're saying, it seems like the gas is the most reliable part of all of this because it's not dependent on wind in the middle of the ocean and whatnot. But you are sold out of gas turbines, from what I understand, through 2028. So is that going to be a bottleneck, especially, with your customer base changing as well and demanding more of this power?
So there's a lot of discussions on that, and we've spent a lot of time with the Department of Energy. We've committed that the reason why a power plant doesn't get built, it won't be because we can't deliver a gas turbine. I would say when you look at the number of people that it takes to build these, so think about all the craft laborers that you need to actually do the civil construction, to get the power plants up and installed and running. It's a tremendous number of people. So I think we believe the biggest constraint will ultimately be, do the contractors that we use to build these plants, do they truly have access to enough skilled labor at a productivity rate that you would expect or historically see that can actually install all the gas turbines that are already on order today? This morning, again, I'm a big CNBC fan. I think they were acknowledging gas turbines won't necessarily be the constraint. What they said is now becoming the constraint is land, because you actually have to be able to site the gas turbine where you have access to natural gas, we have access to water, we have access to interconnect and transmission lines. And because of that, the good sites have largely been taken. And now we're finding harder places to put the gas turbine power plant. But also, if you're going to use them for behind the meter applications or data center applications, you're looking for redundancy. So you're looking for 2 gas lines that intersect versus just one, because you're trying to get to 5 nines of reliability. In order to do that, obviously, if you don't have access to gas or something's wrong with a line, you want to make sure that you have a backup.
So very interesting. And let me ask you this, though. You had mentioned earlier on that you're operating in Mexico, other parts of the world. And I can't not ask the question about the tariff and the trade policy, and how is that impacting on how are you navigating through that part?
It's been a challenge. I would say if COVID did anything for us, though, it brought back a lot more of our global supply chain to localized areas where we're actually using the components. So, yes, the tariffs have impacted us. We've been sharing those costs largely with our customers in terms of how we bridge that. But the benefit that we have is, at least in the United States, we've got the largest gas turbine manufacturing facility right down the street in Greenville, South Carolina. And that's been a big piece of the fact that we still had a large manufacturing base here in the U.S. The bulk of our investment in terms of capacity growth has been here in the U.S., and therefore it's allowed us to defray a lot of the tariffs that we otherwise would have been experiencing had we been using some more of our international factories to deliver on those.
So we've been talking about how the power needs are there for the data centers and AI and companies and whatnot. I want to ask about, and feel free to give your trade secrets on how you are using AI internally for your processes, and where is it playing a role, and if you have an example or two to share.
Sure. So we decided last year, we do our strat cycles on an annualized basis. So last July, when we were together as a team, I think we all kind of acknowledged that we needed to become more contemporary with our way of thinking, that the world is changing around us. So much of the demand for our products are being utilized for AI and data centers, and yet I felt as though we were lagging behind in terms of our own utilization. So effectively, we built 3 programs from an AI perspective. One for productivity, one for customer value, and one in terms of how we embed AI into our products. So the one for productivity, and I'm going to selflessly use this as an advertisement for the number of engineers that we're going to hire here over the coming years. But this year we need to hire 750 engineers to meet the global demand that we see. Next year, we'll hire another 500 and another 500 beyond that the year beyond. Not only to meet the demand, but also from the perspective of a large portion of our engineers in the United States will be retirement eligible over the next 5 years. So we really need to start bringing those folks online such that we can get them trained up. We can transfer a lot of the knowledge that we have. But I think we're recognizing that hiring that number of engineers in a given year is no small feat. And having productive engineers day one is also going to be a challenge. So we're really looking at the areas in our engineering processes where it's not really value add. I always say we have the world's best and brightest engineers, and we hire really creative engineers that want to do new things, but then we have them do things like taking a 250-page customer spec sheet and compare it to our standard spec sheet. That's not a lot of value add creation. So that's a great way where we're deploying AI today and having an agent do that for us. So we're not spending our engineering team's valuable time on really just checking specifications. In terms of customer value, we've got now more than 25 years of data on our F-class combined cycle fleet. So think about it as a generation of technology ago from the highest efficiency gas turbines that we have. While we've got really good knowledge and understanding of how those gas turbines are aging and the incremental work that's required on those to keep them operating, the steam turbines and the generators that are married up with those gas turbines are now reaching what we call their third major inspection cycle. So it's the point in time where they're really starting to need a lot of maintenance. And we haven't experienced as much there. So utilizing AI with the data that we have to be more predictive in terms of the maintenance that those assets are going to need is how we're deploying customer value. And then again, the last one, embedding AI into our product. As I mentioned, we have a controls business. And within the controller, we're now embedding AI such that when you have a problem and you get an alert in the control room, instead of a control room operator having to either know what that alert means and how they should go about troubleshooting it, they basically have, I'll call it our internal version of ChatGPT right there in the controller that will give you all the fault mechanisms of what that could potentially be. And there again, when you think about the number of new power plants that are going to come online over the next 5-10 years across the globe, we just don't have the experienced operators anymore either. So embedding AI in the controller itself and going to more autonomous-based controls really allows our customers to plan ahead and ensure that they're going to have the resources that they need to operate the plants after they get up and running.
Great. So in a few minutes, I'm going to start taking some audience questions. If you want to come in the front here to the mic and line up, then I'll know that you have a question, so I'll contain my own questions accordingly. But let me ask you about, you have spent so much time at GE, and how has the culture evolved over this period of time? Because that's a lot of culture to be thinking about for 25 years.
It is. And I would say when I joined, as I mentioned, it was a company that was admired for process, Six Sigma. And I think over time, we got a little bit away from our operational roots, and we maybe became a little too commercially focused. Over the last 6 years, we have absolutely brought back the culture of lean. And I would say, unlike maybe my early days in the company, I didn't really appreciate what real lean looked like. And building a culture of problem solvers and a culture that took more action than maybe building PowerPoints and telling everybody what they were going to do. I said, we probably wasted more good ideas on PowerPoint charts that never got executed than many companies in the entire world. So the culture of lean that we have today is one that I completely embrace. I think I am very much an A to B thinker, and setting up lean lines, setting up our policy deployment, or what we call Hoshinkanri, our strategy, building capabilities, I think has been one of the best things that we could have done for the culture of Vernova.
You earlier mentioned that you attract the best and the brightest engineers to GE Vernova. So I didn't realize that everybody is from Georgia Tech in your company, but that's good to know.
That's why we're here.
But there are more budding engineers as well in the audience, and I want to ask you, what is your advice for people who are considering careers in energy, technology, and sustainability? And what will be the next generation of leadership qualities that you will need?
I think the leaders that we will need for tomorrow are absolutely different than the leaders that led the industry over the last 20 years. I've talked a lot about kind of unabated gas turbines, but if we could rewind the clock 24 months ago, and you would have been sitting in one of our strategy discussions, it was all about hydrogen, the ability to be able to burn hydrogen in gas turbines, carbon capture, and really trying to find ways that we could deploy those types of technologies in gas turbines, but at a cost-effective rate. I think today we're all hearing a lot about the increase in power prices, the fact that a lot of folks can't afford an increase in their power prices that they're seeing today. And it's something that we've got to work on as we deploy a lot of new technology out into the field. But decarbonized power is even more expensive. So I think to some of the new engineers that we have, I don't know if we necessarily know the technologies of the future that are going to allow for abated gas turbines to be on par from a life cycle cost that we see today on natural gas. But that is absolutely going to be needed. But I think leaders that embrace AI, I have 4 young daughters between 5th grade and juniors in high school. And
I hope you're saving up for them.
I am. But for especially my twins are juniors, and they're at that point right now where we're starting to talk about, well, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And probably one of the biggest concerns that I have for them is just understanding, for whatever they choose, how is AI going to change the way that your work will change over your lifespan? Now, I also tell them, when I was your age, I thought I wanted to be a doctor, and here I am doing something very different. So don't be afraid to change course if you feel it's not your path. But I do think adopting AI, understanding how to learn and use AI to do more than what you ever could have done without it, I think is going to be the key to success. So at least, and I know we were having an interesting conversation with your president a little earlier this afternoon about, yes, just how are we training the next generation today to use it as a tool versus necessarily a crutch. It may mean you don't have to be the best at everything that you would have had to be the best at in the past. But I do think you'll absolutely have to be the best at how you deploy AI with whatever it is that you're going to do, because it will be a multiplier in terms of anything that you're able to accomplish.
That's all he's been talking about since he came back from Davos. So I have a feeling 2026 will be the big AI stuff that we'll be doing at Georgia Tech. But let me ask one last question before I open it up to the audience. Scheller College of Business is home to the Ray C. Anderson Center for Sustainable Business, which works really at the intersection of business, policy, and innovation to advance energy transition. Looking ahead, I want to put you on a spot and ask you, what is one bold initiative that the Ray C. Anderson Center and GE Vernova could pursue together, whether through SustainX, like we have that, or the Business Compact, joint research, or other partnerships? If you could identify what would be one meaningful thing to accelerate energy transition outcomes at scale.
So any technologies that we can partner on, as I said, that would help the deployment of natural gas turbines, but also carbon capture. I say that because a lot of the work that we're doing today is based on solid sorbents. So if you look at carbon capture and the available technologies today, they're all liquid amine based. So they're chemical plants. Chemical plants bolted onto the back end of a gas turbine. They have high parasitic loads. They're very costly, which is why we believe the future of carbon capture will be with solid sorbents. We have our first DAC facility up and running at our research center up in Niskayuna, New York. We started with DAC because DAC will be the hardest carbon capture concentrations to work with. You think 0.04% versus a gas turbine, that's 4%. The best way to actually do carbon capture is to boost the concentration of that carbon intensity because it's easier from a sorbent perspective to be able to get scale. So I think that would be a great way. Or, I'll give a call out to a few students that already came up to me, and it sounds like they've got a great sales pitch that they were able to convince Southern Company on. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to that email and understanding how they can partner with us as well.
You're about to probably hear more of them. So let's go ahead and please identify yourself very quickly, and let's have a short question with a question mark at the end.
Good evening. Welcome, Mr. Gray, to Schiller College of Business. I am Robert Ed. I'm a graduate student. I'm also a Army contract officer. So one question I have is, how far are you along with developing alternative renewable energy, such as microgrids and geothermal electricity at our military? You're working on a project with the University of Utah on providing sustainable energy to our military installations. How much of that is going to meet net carbon emission standards?
So what I would say is microgrids, definitely not part of my area of expertise. Geothermal I can speak to only from the perspective of we did a sprint evaluating if geothermal is a good opportunity for us to delve into. Unfortunately, what we found was some of our traditional oil and gas business that was spun off is likely a better business to be able to do geothermal, because where we believe geothermal will really play the most valuable role is in very deep wells. So drilling technology is becoming extremely important. When you look at our core capabilities, that's not something that we possess, and therefore it's not something that we're really looking into. The closest thing I would say that we're really now exploring, and you would have heard our CEO talk about at our investor day, and then this morning again at earnings, was fuel cells. And really looking at reviving the business that we had around fuel cells. It's one area where we think that there's a real market opportunity to deploy those at scale, and one that we will continue to invest in and share a little bit more as we get a little bit farther along our development cycle.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alex Kudratov, and I'm an actuarial consultant specializing in data engineering. My question is around how you emerged as a leader amongst the competition and what you think your secret sauce is as you went from a plant manager or plant analyst to plant chemist to CEO.
I think it's the hairstyle.
Yeah, I would agree.
I don't know about that.
I would say there's no perfect pathway. There's no secret sauce. But I will share, I guess, some of the things that I look in and some of or look for in our future leaders. I am always looking for the individual that stands out amongst their peer group as a somewhat of a natural leader. So someone who takes the extra initiative to design a better process, find a better way to do something, and their peers emulate their behaviors because they see that it's a better way. Command and control, I don't think ever has worked out very well in terms of getting people to do better work or more work, etc. I also feel like coming from the field and truly understanding the technology that we deploy, getting to understand how our customers deploy that technology, I think, at least in this field, has been critical in terms of really being able to understand what it is we do for our customer base, and then translating that back into the organization to motivate the organization, who a good portion of really never gets to touch our customers. So a lot of the folks that we have never really get to see the technology get deployed in the field. And that's really where I think the magic happens between our technology, the way the customer utilizes it, and the importance that it means to the communities in which it serves.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Angelica Hood. I'm an evening MBA student, and professionally, I'm a data analyst at Cisco. My question is, do you see the data center boom as a sustainability constraint, or do you see it as an opportunity for GE to redefine what sustainable growth looks like at the grid and systems level?
It's a great question. And I think I'll answer it in two parts. So I think today, undeniably, the world is going to install a lot more power plants, whether that's gas turbine power plants, et cetera, that are somewhat counterintuitive to a lot of the stated sustainability goals. I think the question becomes is how do then we harness those tools and capabilities that we will now have with AI and data centers to utilize it to find ways faster for how we increase our sustainability goals. We still say we are a purpose-built energy company to electrify, to thrive, and decarbonize the world. So we are still very much committed to our decarbonization goals. As I was talking to a few gentlemen before I was coming in, the way I see it today is there's a lot of discussion in terms of are you overbuilding to the broad industry in terms of the number of plants that will be deployed. I look at it as you look at the number of electrons that are still being produced from fossil coal facilities in the United States today. Call it 60 gigawatts or more with some of the biggest utilities in the country. If in fact you find that you have somewhat overbuilt, I think it's a win-win because you can then just decommission those coal facilities and you run high efficiency natural gas, which has actually been the biggest driver in the United States from a decarbonization perspective. So I do see these deployments as really win-wins today. And then eventually we'll use those capabilities to further decarbonize.
Thank you for your perspective.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is William Zelenak. I'm a investment intern at the Georgia Tech Foundation. In looking into the energy sector, my question for you is: there's a lot of skepticism around the feasibility and profitability of small modular reactors. What is GE doing to ensure a reasonable timeline on developing this product and dealing with the high level of regulatory scrutiny that comes with nuclear power?
No, it's one that I got a crash course in over the last 48 hours as part of my new role. And it's probably from an outsider's perspective, it's been one of the biggest questions that I've had just because as I talk to customers about deploying GE Vernova technology in terms of how do you deploy the fastest technology and at reasonable cost. I will tell you, I was very pleased with what I learned from the team in terms of the modularization design that we've come up with for small modular reactors. The fact that we do recognize that we've got to take costs out of the product, but a big way of how you take costs out of that product is really in the constructability of the facility, because the reactor itself isn't necessarily some of the highest cost equipment. It's the containment walls that you have to build and how you build those containment walls to withstand a potential airline or aircraft strike, how you build those containment walls to withstand earthquakes, natural disasters, etc. So finding ways from a constructability perspective is really going to be one of the biggest ways that we will take costs out of those products. And I would say we are much farther along on the journey than maybe what I would have assumed as an outsider. So I'm really looking forward to getting to know more about what that team is doing and the opportunity to lead that team in the future here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Let's take the last two questions.
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm a third-year mechanical engineering major. I think you really rightly identified standardization as one of the most important paths forward for nuclear in the coming decade and how it's going to grow and become at scale. I was wondering if you had any specific predictions or plans for how GE is going to work to lead in standardizing a single or a few single designs for an SMR.
I think the biggest thing that we've led in is the fact that we're the only ones with an SMR under construction today. And I think the learnings that we're getting from that real field experience is translating into changing our standard design already. We've got quite a few engagements with a lot of customers here in the United States that I would say we are on the precipice of being able to sign additional small modular reactors with them. And the way that we're looking at this is a traditional large-scale nuclear reactor would have been a gigawatt. You take 5 of ours that are 300 megawatts, that's kind of the sweet spot of where we see you having the ability to build scale. The best thing that we have from a cost perspective is the fact that as soon as you get one 300 megawatt block up and running, you can start generating electrons. That means that you don't have the long financing costs that you would otherwise have waiting for one large 1 gigawatt facility to come online. So I just think the more and more reps that we get of building these 300 megawatt blocks, the faster we will become. So not only will you get the product cost down, but you'll also eliminate that financing cost. That is a tremendous piece of the cost that goes into building a nuclear facility, and we'll be able to condense that by building them faster.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Cameron. I'm a civil engineering major going into environmental science and energy. And I wanted to ask, what are some of the biggest challenges that GE Vernova faces when developing regenerative technologies across the globe? And do you think there is a global race for other nations to develop this sort of technology?
I would definitely say there is a not so much a race, but a desire for other countries to develop the technologies. I think in the past, we may have given away some of our IP, and not recent past, but call it 15 years ago or so, where we would have given IP to other countries. I think we've quickly come to the realization that we can't really afford to create more global competitors in this space. So there's some countries where we are very careful to set up any type of manufacturing facility, to give them any of our IP that we would have that they could potentially copy and then start to produce on their own. So maybe a little bit less of a global race, but one I think that that will definitely occur over time.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Eric, for this very energizing conversation. Pun intended. Thank you very much. Thank you. I would also like to thank all of you who joined us today and invite you to our next Tech Talks business session. On February 27th, we will be hosting a special edition of Tech Talks Business featuring a panel of chief marketing officers as part of the Marketing Innovation Conference. The registration for that is open, and for this one, the space is limited, so please do register as soon as you can. We hope to see you there then. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.